Right. So it's the first time we're doing it, so I'm not sure how successful it would be. We will have the right answers, the right questions, the right subject matter coming from all of you guys. You might face some technical issues as well. The idea is that in light of what has happened, what has dramatically changed from January 23rd to now in 2.5 months, is we are seeing that the landscape with COVID-19 challenges have increased, especially in the payment industry. And the idea is that we want to see that what is the impact in Pakistan and what can be done to make things better in terms of people transacting and as well as for the bankers who are working in the field, um, with four key questions. Strategic measures that the banking industry can take in light of this pandemic, and actually with the worst case scenario where we have a full curfew where nobody is allowed to leave, and maybe banking becomes a non-essential service in terms of branches being open, or maybe ATMs being unable to be replenished, and maybe people might have to move to a lot of digital means. The second question is, or the second point is, what fintechs can do to promote digital payments and making the consumers avoid cash as much as possible, because there are studies which say that cash is becoming one of the key factors in spreading the coronavirus, especially with the cash that is being dealt within the hospital and then is reaching either a branch or a place where a lot of cash is being utilized, like markets, etc. Third one is how onboarding of merchants can be done. I think in this one we can, maybe Omar Moin will be able uh, to come up with the ideas of what can be done with smaller merchants that are present within a locality, to be have more merchants that can allow this means of digital onboarding and avoiding cash payments with retailers. And lastly, it's with the regulations, with the regulator can make can help ease uh, some key onboarding criterias, as well as transacting criterias, to have more onboarding and quick conversion of cash-based customers onto digital. So without further ado, I will ask Nadeem Saab uh, to start. Please. I've unmuted you.
Assalamu alaikum. I think it's a sign of the times that we are having the first conference that I'm actually speaking at on a digital format. This is what we think is going to happen, and more of it is to happen. I'm going to pick up three schemes and some myths that are floating around right now. I think we have to take into account कि हमारे ज़मीनी हक़ाइक़ क्या हैं इस वक्त, notwithstanding ये वबा जो हमारे साथ इस वक्त चल रही है, coronavirus. We are a cash economy. We have 7.3 trillion rupees in circulation. This means money which is printed but not in any bank account. That's equal to 30% of the total deposits we have in bank accounts. This is one of the highest that we have in the world. Juxtapose this with our saving rate to GDP, and it's in single digits. Again, it's one of the lowest in the world. So even the money that's in circulation, it basically, we are a transactional economy. अब बात ये हो रही है कि अगर हम कैश ट्रांजैक्शनल इकोनॉमी है, तो हाउ डज द बिहेवियर चेंज, हाउ कैन बी चेंज बिहेवियर जब आगे पीछे जाने की पाबंदियां लग रही हैं, हाउ विल द कस्टमर बिहेवियर चेंज एंड हाउ कैन बी चेंज द कस्टमर जर्नी. पहली एक मिथ बहुत पॉपुलेट हो रही है इस वक्त कि जी कमर्शियल बैंक्स जो हैं उनकी ब्रांचेस खत्म हो जाएंगी पोस्ट कोरोना, स्केलेटन ब्रांचेस रह जाएंगी, पूरा पाकिस्तान जो है डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन शुरू कर देगा. My own prediction is that over the next 3 years, bank branches will actually increase, not decrease. And the basis of my prediction is the commercial model that our banks currently employ, which means that they source low-cost deposits from their branches. 70% of their earnings come from investment in government paper, treasury bills, and PIBs. And therefore, at this stage, because our population still feels strongly about bricks and mortars, whether it's branches or they are branchless banking agents, physical premises where deposit or cash in or a wallet is populated, I personally don't see a major change in the bank branches number. In fact, I'm going against the tide in saying that number of bank branches will increase because as per, if you take density per branches, then we still have a lot of room for further expansion in remote areas. So post corona जब movement शुरू हो जाएगा और लोग फिर बैंक पे जाना पड़ेंगे, maybe there'll be a marginal decrease in the number of people who are doing physical transactions. लेकिन ज़मीनी हक़ाइक़ ये है कि आपका इस वक्त cash transaction is something which is free and a digital transaction is taxed heavily. So you are not providing the incentives for somebody to go digital. अब इस वक्त डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शंस जो हो रहे हैं वो क्या हो रहे हैं और क्या हो सकते हैं. 13 साल पहले हमने यूटिलिटी बिल डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन इजी पैसा के थ्रू कर दी. 13 साल पहले 30 मिलियन बिल जनरेट होते हैं महीने के यूटिलिटी कंपनीज के, जिसमें तकरीबन अभी भी सिर्फ 40% जो है वो इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली होते हैं, बाकी 60 जो है वो लोग जाके फिजिकली बैंक ब्रांचेस और नाजरा में करते हैं. 13 साल से हम कस्टमर बिहेवियर चेंज नहीं कर सके कि तमाम यूटिलिटी बिल जो है हम जो उसको इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ले जाए. एक शेर है इकबाल का कि मस्जिद तो बना ली शब भर में, ईमा की हरारत वालों ने, दिल अपना पुराना पापी है, बरसों में नमाजी बन ना सका. The point I'm trying to make is कि हमने स्टेट बैंक के पास जाके रेगुलेशंस चेंज करा के लेवल 0 अकाउंट की ऑन बोर्डिंग बहुत आसान कर दी. वन ऑफ द फ्यू कंट्रीज इन द वर्ल्ड where you can dial a string *786 hash or the other prefix, put in your CNIC number and you can open a level 0 account. आपको 2 ट्रांजैक्शंस भी अलाउड हैं. सो उसकी वजह से कस्टमर जर्नी चेंज हुई और जो ब्रांचेस बैंकिंग प्रोवाइडर्स हैं उन्होंने इसको हेविली मार्केट किया. तो हमारे पास तकरीबन, आई इफ नंबर इज नॉट करेक्ट, 50 मिलियन वॉलेट्स आ गए. लेकिन वॉलेट्स में ट्रांजैक्शन नहीं आए क्योंकि कस्टमर बिहेवियर अभी तक चेंज नहीं हुआ. उसमें जो यूज केस डालना था वो नहीं बना. अभी तक उसका यूज केस सबसे बड़ा है एयर टाइम, फिर P2P पेमेंट्स. The amount of actually payments for online purchases, although increasing, is still very small. There is hardly any offline payment, यानी कि physical payment at the merchants. तो अगर हमने अपनी कंट्री को डिजिटल ले जाना है, and coronavirus is a incentive for changing behavior and government for changing the landscape. तो पहली चीज तो आपने करनी है कि आपके जो मर्चेंट्स हैं, जो कितने मर्चेंट्स हैं जो फिजिकल डिजिटल पेमेंट एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हैं कंपेयर टू कैश ट्रांजैक्शंस. We don't have a merchant network, prevalent integrated merchant network, जहां a person can go and use a wallet for payments. अभी तक हमारा जो सिनेरियो है कैश, डिजिटल कैश है, कैश आया वॉलेट में गया, कैश होके बाहर निकल गया, because there is not enough use cases for the wallet to be used. So if we want to look for a behavior change, post corona, it's not going to happen. The moment movement starts, people will fall back to their old habits. What we need to do is use this time. If I would even say, onboarding of merchants may be considered essential services if we want to, if you're in a curfew situation, so वो बंदा क्या करेगा? If we have the ability for the local retailer to accept digital payments, then that's the first step. लेकिन ये काफ़ी नहीं है. इस वक्त भी हम देख रहे हैं कि बहुत सारी सुपरमार्केट्स ने डिजिटली वेबसाइट बना दी है या कॉल सेंटर बना दिया है, लेकिन जो इश्यू आ रहा है लास्ट माइल का. So this is an integrated solution. When you're talking about digital delivery for physical goods, you need to think about last mile as well. उसके बगैर ये नहीं होगा. तो पहला जो मेरा पॉइंट है कि कमर्शियल बैंक की ब्रांचेस अक्सरियत या मटीरियली कम नहीं होंगी, and unless we create the ecosystem, we will revert back to our old habits with some marginal number of early users accepting the new way of doing things. I see probably e-education, जिसका मतलब है कि लोग जो अब घर से पढ़ा रहे हैं, ट्यूशन दे रहे हैं या पूरे स्कूल चल रहे हैं, that's happening a lot more. I see e-health, जो लोग ऑनलाइन फार्मेसी से अब ऑर्डर कर रहे हैं और डिजिटल पेमेंट्स कर रहे हैं, लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी जहाँ अवेलेबल है, much greater chance of sticking to a behavior change than the use of cash, because the use of cash has other issues as well. इस वक्त जो है आपका मर्चेंट डरता है कि अगर वो डिजिटल पेमेंट लेगा तो वो एफबीआर के टैक्स नेट पे आ जाएगा. इस वक्त आपने मर्चेंट के पास कस्टमर जर्नी ऐसी बनाई नहीं है कि इतना आसान हो कि कस्टमर आए और डिजिटल परचेसेस करे अपने वॉलेट से. अभी तक 1 QR कोड का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन तक नहीं हुआ है. सो द सेकंड पॉइंट आई एम मेकिंग इज कि अगर हम चाहते हैं एज अ नेशन कि हम बिहेवियर चेंज करें, देन जो हमारे पुराने चैलेंजेस थे दोज चैलेंजेस रिमेन. अगर हम पुराने चैलेंजेस को फिक्स नहीं करेंगे, just because movement रुक गई है, just because people are forced to use digital payments right now, doesn't mean that will stick. Maybe a small percentage will stick and we'll fall back into our old habits. Public-private partnerships to try and create that ecosystem that we were not able to. अगर हमारे पास 1,00,000 2 लाख मर्चेंट्स होते हैं फिजिकल जहाँ वॉलेट्स एक्सेप्ट हो सकते हैं, अगर हमारे पास लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी उनकी एसेंशियल सर्विसेज में हो जाती है, अगर हमारे पास एफबीआर 2-3 साल की टैक्स हॉलिडे देने को तैयार है फॉर दीज सी कैटेगरी मर्चेंट्स. मर्चेंट ऑनबोर्डिंग स्टेट बैंक के नई रेगुलेशन के बाद बहुत आसान हो गई है. एक जमाने में आप मर्चेंट को ऑनबोर्ड करने के लिए कहते थे यार मुझे अपना आर्टिकल ऑफ मेमोरेंडम ऑफ एसोसिएशन और बोर्ड रेजोल्यूशन दो. Now which Kiryana store or a hawker has these documents? So State Bank has come up with segmented merchant acquisition, which means कि आपका जो B या स्पेशली C माइक्रो मर्चेंट है उसको आप लेवल 0 अकाउंट की तरह से ऑन बोर्ड कर सकते हैं. तो मर्चेंट ऑन बोर्डिंग इज नॉट एन इश्यू. बट मुझे ये बताएं मर्चेंट ऑन बोर्ड क्यों करवाएगा? उसको इस वक्त कैश मिल रहा है, आप उसको कहते हैं कि जी मैं MDR 1% 2% लगाऊंगा, तो वो क्यों करेगा? अनलेस अगेन आपके पास एक इंटीग्रेटेड सोल्यूशन है जहां आप मर्चेंट को कहते हैं यार 0 MDR और 0.5 MDR और आपका बिजनेस मॉडल उसके डिपॉजिट से पैसे बनाता है एंड यू प्रोवाइड हिम क्रेडिट बेस्ड ऑन हिज डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शंस. आई सी मेजर चैलेंजेस इन पीपल एक्वायरिंग मर्चेंट्स. और ये वही बात है, मैंने कुछ कंपनीज को देखा है जिन्होंने मर्चेंट्स एक्वायर तो कर लिए लेकिन उसमें ट्रांजैक्शंस बहुत ही कम है. वॉलेट्स खुल तो गए लेकिन उसके अंदर एक्टिव वॉलेट्स बहुत ही कम है. So if we really want to change again the behavior of what we want to go to digital, तो एक तो पहले इसमें there is a digital roadmap already, which Tanya Drews came up, based on feedback from the industry. The State Bank has a financial inclusion digital roadmap, which is also there. The question is of execution, not of imagination. अगर हुकूमत भी अपने सब पेमेंट्स इस मामले आजकल जो है कहते जी मेरे ऑल पेमेंट्स जो है वो डिजिटली मैं पे करूंगा, मेरे जितने भी एम्प्लॉइज हैं आई एम गोइंग टू गिव देम मनी ओनली इन डिजिटल सेंस. जो हमारी 2 सक्सेसेस थी वो 13 साल पुरानी है. हमने 13 साल पहले BISP को कन्वर्ट किया था फ्रॉम पोस्ट ऑफिस इनटू अ डिजिटल पेमेंट. 13 साल हो गए. EOBI को और अदर सम ऑफ द अदर पंजाब के अंदर एग्रीकल्चर सब उसको 10 साल हो गए. We haven't had a major breakthrough of bulk either by the government or by the private sector on converting customer behavior for acceptance of their salaries or other payments into their wallet, and then having enough use cases in their wallet to make it a digital society. हमारे पास बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो बहुत सारे ममालिक के पास नहीं है. We have NADRA, which means that most of the, and we have biometric verification for all people who have a phone. तो ये तो digital identity establish करना, बेशक नादरा की कॉस्ट महंगी है, but it's there. आपके पास PMD है जो आपके 2-3 चीजें और कनेक्ट कर देता है. So lot of that infrastructure exists, but we are not able to put the dots together. और हमने जो 10-12 साल पहले solutions बनाए थे, largely जो है वही चल रहे हैं. कोई innovation breakthrough जैसे हमने domestic remittance को digitize किया था, अभी तक नहीं आया. कुछ volume, I've seen some stuff in international remittance, but no volume is yet. Lastly, what I'm saying, देखें जो चीजें होंगी, आपको आपके डॉक्यूमेंट्स डिजिटल हो जाएंगे, आपके डॉक्यूमेंट सिग्नेचर डिजिटल हो जाएंगे, and lot of, because of this corona and the inability for free movement, a lot of Pakistani services will go digital. But my hope is, or at least my sense is, that banking, or what we have as it is, and payments as we have it is, will not go materially digital unless we have solutions for the challenges that we had previously. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm sure you're going to have an exciting and interesting conference. Mujhe, unfortunately, I have another follow-on call, but if you want, and if it's in your format, for 5 minutes, I can take questions, or, you may, if it disrupts your flow, then you can have questions at the end, but unfortunately, I won't be able to participate in that.
Thank you, Nadeem Saab. Very interesting. You made another prediction that the branches will increase. You've talked about highly taxed digital transactions, last mile issues, e-education, e-help coming into the digital thing, and the tech issues of onboarding of digital merchants. Unfortunately, the format today is that we want to continue with the people that are speaking. I would like to thank you again for your time. And hopefully, if there are any questions, I will pass it on to you so that we can share it with our participants.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you. All right, guys. So moving on, that was Nadeem Hussain. You guys know very well. Now it's Kareem Jandani, who's the CEO of Paces Labs. Paces is doing a lot of things in the market for digital payments, as well as digitizing some key institutions in the country. Because I will try to keep time. So without taking a lot of time, I would like Kareem to start with one maybe question on my head is maybe the role of MPG, which is being introduced by State Bank as maybe a point to consider it is Kareem. Go ahead.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
So I'll try to stick to the questions which were given in the agenda. So I think the first question which we had was about the strategic measures that banking industry can take in a worst case scenario. So see, the key objective should be that the exchange of value and commerce should not stop at all. Right now, if we look at the banking industry, the fintechs, we have got a lot of solutions which are being offered for consumers. There are a lot of options to easily open an account or a wallet, and then there are consumer digital finance channels available. But the weak link for our industry is that when it comes to business side, we are still stuck in a paper-based mode. Not all of the banks are offering corporate banking solutions. So when you look at the payment matrix, there are three actors: business, people, and government. So the B2P and B2B, these streams are those streams which need to be focused by the banks because in a state of worst scenario or an actual curfew, uh, I can imagine a lot of problem with B2B payments. Uh, just to give you a personal example, that if I have to pay right now, uh, pass major payments to other business partners or different companies, or we have to look at account payables and receivables. Right now, the industry is facing a challenge because most of those payments are done by checks. Uh, the reason being that there are not a lot of corporate banking solutions available. So, I mean, I would go to the length to say that, State Bank should make it mandatory for every financial institution to offer corporate banking also in as a digital channel. Obviously, with adequate level of security, you can have now two-factor authentications using innovative solutions like soft tokens. So that should be looked at. The other thing which is important is that as we are relying more and more on digital, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is reliable. Right now, we are able to organize this conference because we have a reliable service from Zoom. Uh, I'm not sure that if for a longer period we have got a lot of digital payments, are we groomed towards managing the infrastructure remotely and reliably? So this is one area where all the institutions need to focus, particularly looking at the failure rates. In normal circumstance, if a transaction fails, I have a recourse that I can do it manually. But in an actual curfew kind of situation, that would be my lifeline. So the infrastructure reliability is very important. Uh, Also, what is important is that the need to adjust the SOPs to allow for remote working 24 by 7, allowing remote access to not only to your own staff but to vendors. And generally, when we talk about security in our country, security does not mean that stop all the remote access. Good security factors involved. So those are the areas I think where the banking industry needs to focus, in my view. Uh, the second question which we had was about what can fintechs in Pakistan do to further promote digital payments instead of cash. I would agree with all of the points which Nadeem Saab said that, and I mean, there to make a change or to promote digital payments instead of cash is going to take a lot of efforts, not just from the fintech side, but obviously from regulators, from government, first of all, because the government can be a huge driver of digital payments. Uh, so I mean, because the time is limited, we can't go into what government can do. There are a lot of things which it has to do, but a few particular areas, again, I mean, I think, and this is connected to the first part, that a lot of fintechs are focusing on B2C solutions around consumers, offering payment solutions. And a lot of time I question that, if my bank is offering me utility bill payments and a fintech comes up with an app with a smart wallet and offers me the same solution, why would I use their app? Uh, in normal times, we have seen that a lot of fintechs have been offering discounts and incentives to encourage customer. I think we need to come out of that mindset and start thinking more broad. Look at the business to business vertical value chains, what you can do in that. Payments always have a context. So the solutions need to be thought through and built around. A lot of fintechs are at an early stage, and they may not have direct access to payment systems because of the regulatory regime. And so they should try to partner with the banks if they come up with a solution for, say, bulk disbursements or vendor payments, things like that. Because there is a need for such solutions, and fintechs can play a good role in getting the small and medium-sized enterprises onboarded onto such platforms. Uh, because we are dealing with a pandemic situation and there is a lot of fundraising being held, crowdfunding is another area where fintechs can work. SECP has got a sandbox guideline issued, and crowdfunding is now one of the things which is allowed under that, so that can be explored. Besides that, I mean, I will just again repeat that there's no dearth of solution when it comes to consumer payments. So we need to look at other areas, other kind of financial services, delivery of those services if it can be made possible. Uh, about the increase in onboarding of merchants to avoid cash payments. So as Basit requested that I can share some insights around what is happening with MPG. So see, the idea is that just onboarding a merchant won't help because if you onboard a merchant and then the merchant, as Nadeem Saab pointed out, that cash is cheaper than digital transaction for the merchant. The merchant cannot receive payments freely. The merchant does not receive the cash immediately. In case of a cash transaction, the merchant gets the cash immediately. But in case of a digital payment, the money comes in T+1 or T+2 after a few days. So that doesn't help because if you study the value chain, if we are talking about a mom and pop shop accepting digital payments, they won't accept it unless they have the money readily available in their wallet or account, and they can then spend it in the value chain. So we need to think of this holistically. And what MPG's aim is eventually is that for all these use cases, whether it's bulk payments or individual single retail payments or retail transfers, for all of them, the transaction is immediate. There is a guaranteed confirmation to the payer that the payee has received the amount, and the settlement of funds between the institutions takes place in the same day. Because unless that does not happen, we cannot truly digitize the end mile. So onboarding of merchants, State Bank has issued regulations, and today I shared on the digital payments WhatsApp group as well the new regulations which came I think a couple of days back, and the regulations now are very much in favor of remote onboarding of merchants, even to the extent that we have extended the timelines for biometric verification mandate. So a lot of flexibility is there. I haven't seen a solution till yet in the market where there is a digital onboarding app for merchants where you can start onboarding merchants. But going forward, as I said, that just onboarding the merchant won't help digitize the entire value chain. We have to start thinking about solutions where the merchants can get funds instantly in their account. So this is about the merchant side. Now talking about what the regulations, what are the expectations from regulations to make the digital conversion quick. See, I'll start with a few points which are may not sound that they are very important right now, but if you look at the bigger picture, we need to start making life easier for all the businesses, so they can then digitize their behavior and then go and digitize the consumers. So far, when it comes to, I mean, small things like let's say if there is an inward remittance for coming for a company in the country, you have to sign a form R, and a lot of banks are still insisting on that. Okay, I need a signed form in this trying circumstances. Why can't we move to the digital form of digital signatures or e-signature? I think the law covers that. So it's just a matter of structured guidelines on digital signatures. Uh, so that the different kind of contracts and different kind of forms can be signed digitally and exchanged digitally. uh, there should be, this is an ideal time to reduce paper-based and check-based payments. So maybe a regulator can look into incentivizing or forcing the banks to offer B2B solutions digitally, so that at least your bulk of payments like salaries and vendor payments can move into that area. More digital liquidity would mean that there is an incentive for the banks to offer digital services at a cheaper rate. And I think the use of cloud-based technologies and remote working facilities, these needs to be clarified. Some of the banks have this misnomer still that remote access is not allowed by State Bank. So we need to have a clarity on that, and also some measures for resilience of the infrastructure. So I think I've almost finished on time. Uh, Thank you, Basit. Thank you, everyone, for the.
Thank you, Kareem. Very insightful. I didn't know that we had some guidelines from SCCP on crowdfunding. So very interesting. Also, you talked about the last mile in MPG, what the State Bank is looking for in terms of regulation. And the typical issue that we have with the wet signature requirements. And you're right, in these testing times, Form R for inward remittance is still a key point that needs to be, I think, pushed to the regulator somehow. Because I think remittance is key in these testing times for us as a country. Lastly, you talked about cloud and the resilience of the current infrastructure, which are very good points, I think, when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much. I hope all of you guys have questions for Kareem, and I hope, Kareem, you are there for us uh, till the end to answer some of these questions. I would now like to invite Umar Muin Malik. You guys know Umar well, and since we are a bit behind time, I would not take a lot of time. But maybe Umar, one question that that comes to mind is, yes, OTC fee is still a challenge. I will not try to hijack what you're trying to say, but maybe you can have some point on this one. Go ahead.
Sure.
And if you can
Thank
open
you.
your video, it's good if you can.
Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty with the video, but
Okay. All right.
let me try
Thank you.
and see what I can do.
All right. Go ahead.
So, thank you, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I'll try to stick to the questions that were sent, and then, of course, the new question on agents and OTC. I'll try to address that as well. Implications of COVID-19 on digital banking. I think it's very important to understand where what we are facing right now, or where we stand right now. So compared to other countries, I think we are in a very, very difficult situation. All the 30, 40 odd banks in the country, we find ourselves, it's sort of a very unfortunate, rude wake-up call for all of us. And all the numbers that we've been throwing out for years at different conferences, the 15,000 bank branches and the 15,000 ATMs, we've seen that ये जितने भी assets थे हमारे now, they've come to a grinding stop because the markets are closed and a lot of bank branches are closed. A lot of people can't travel outside. And a lot of people are doing self-isolation, so they aren't really going outside. So those 15,000 branches, 15,000 ATMs are really not doing much for the people of Pakistan right now. We also have about 10 to 15 million odd customers who use internet or mobile apps for banking. And really, these are the only guys who are still connected to the banking industry right now. The merchants that you had out there in the market, most of the markets are closed, so the merchants are down. The debit cards that you have issued aren't coming in very handy because unfortunately most of them aren't enabled for online payments. So that's the situation that we're facing. I mean, the country is more or less come to a grinding stop when it comes to banking or digital banking is concerned. On the agent side, I can just give you an idea that because I work with one of the largest branchless banking services in Pakistan, we're looking at almost 60 to 70% of our agent network not operating over the last couple of days. And that has a significant impact on what we do and what our customers can do. So it's there, it's happening. The sawal is, what do we do about it? And I'll try to focus on some quick win measures. I know the speakers before me have given some excellent ideas, and these are things that we've been talking about for some time. But I think the need of the hour is to focus on what we can execute now. Like I said, compared to some of the other countries in the region, when I am on a call with my colleagues from my parent companies, they find themselves in a relatively much better position because they were better prepared, not because they knew that something of the sort is going to happen, but because their markets are more digitally savvy. Their markets were more, the consumers were using digital wallets and digital payments and digital apps much more than in Pakistan. So I'll just talk about two things that the fintechs in Pakistan can do to further promote digital payments. And these are strategic measures also. I think one is collaboration. I think that is the most important thing that we can do right now. The fact that to understand that everybody is affected. They may be affected to a greater degree or to a lesser degree, but every financial institute in Pakistan is affected right now. So collaboration, working together and moving away from the traditional approach of where we used to compete with each other. We have to start talking to each other. We have to leverage on each other's strengths and weaknesses. We have to look at how to serve our customers better in this time of crisis. Sharing technology, complementing each other's products, sharing the asks. So one of the biggest challenges that we've had in the past is when we've put forward our asks, we were unable to come onto the same page. अगर हम state bank से कुछ मांगते हैं, अगर हम government से कुछ मांगते हैं, different financial institutes have been on different pages. So I think now is the time, now is the best time. And the number one thing that we must all do is to actually put forward the same asks that we have from other organizations or other industries. That's number one. Number two, I think now is also the time to step up and to realize that this is not the time for financial institutes to make money or to make profits of the suffering and the pain of the people of this country. It's very unfortunate that the regulator, the state bank, had to step up and say that IBFT should be free for everybody. This is something that the banks themselves could have actually sat down and decided when the crisis started. Because this is one that was one I think product where we could have taken a call to move away to a zero profit pricing, just so that we could encourage more digital payments in the country. So just on that, we all financial institutes need to focus much more on their customers at this time than previously before. I strongly believe that after the coronavirus situation is over, inshallah, soon, and when we come out of this, we're going to have a pre-corona and a post-corona environment that we're going to be referring to for many, many years. Because when we come out of this, businesses, banks, other entities, everybody will have to drastically change their way of work. It would just not continue the way that we've been working so far. What's the other topic over here? I think what can we do to increase the onboarding of merchants? So let me address the merchant issue, the question, the OTC question over here. What we are looking at, like I said, about 70% of the markets are closed, and that's for branchless banking players. That's a drastic impact because our customers typically do cash in and cash out at these agent locations. And then the pricing part that you talked about, what can we do over there? So unfortunately, unlike IBFT, when you talk about OTC transactions, the money or there's a fee element involved, and there are commission elements involved because agents have to be paid money to actually do a transaction. If this entire thing is reduced to zero, the agent has no incentive to do any branchless banking transactions, and then they'll shut down their shop. So whatever agents that you have up and running in the market, you'll see a drastic reduction in those numbers as well. So an OTC transaction, unfortunately, is not an honest transaction. As much as we'd like to believe it is, it's not an honest transaction. It's an office transaction with stakeholders involved, and if those stakeholders are not compensated fairly, then there's not much that they can do. So we've been, debating internally on what we can do on the pricing side for OTC services. Unfortunately, there's not much, but for true honest payments, which are bank account to bank account payments, I'm happy to see again all the banks have reduced their IBFT charges. And on our network, at least, we see a great spike of people actually using IBFT at this time of crisis. What can we do to increase the onboarding of merchants and avoid cash payments at retailers? I think very simply, every bank needs to take a look at their processes, their existing processes, whatever risk or compliance processes they have, and they need to make those processes easier. So a popular example that is quoted time and again is, in a country like the US, customers who want to use needs are able to go to the PayPal website and sign up as a merchant in a matter of minutes. All they have to do is take copy the code on the PayPal website. Sorry, I said PayPal. And then copy and paste it into their websites or apps, and they're up and running, and they can start collecting payments. Unfortunately, none of the banking organizations, including mine, are at that stage. So we really have to relook at the processes, and we have to try and simplify them, and we have to work with the relevant stakeholders and the regulators to try and simplify and make it easier for merchants to come on board themselves. Really, at this time of crisis, we don't have people going out, and it's not possible to go out and onboard merchants. We have to look at solutions where merchants can do their self onboarding. Okay, the last question is, what is the expectations from regulations to make the digital conversion quick for customers? I think there are a lot of asks that we can put forward for the regulator. And the regulator's been there. I mean, just very recently, I think yesterday or day before, there were 7 pieces of regulation issued from the central bank. Must have been a record for the central bank also. But 7 pieces of regulation issued in one day, and they're working day and night trying to make sure that they come up with the right things. In terms of additional expectations from the regulator, we need to. What I would like to have or like to see is a more push towards digital payments and getting people to move away from cash as soon as possible. I think the regulator has done a very good job on the debit card regulations, the interchange and the MDR regulations that came out a few months ago. But unfortunately, that's still on POS payments and that's still on retail payments. And at this time, any online merchant, say Daraz or whoever, they're still finding it very difficult to actually make digital payments because it's very, very costly for them. So if we can, focus on interchanges and MDRs for online merchants as well, because now is the need of the time, right? I think that would do more. And then, as long as we are just focusing on push payments, I think one of the major reasons why we find ourselves in this situation as compared to other markets like India or China is because, again, we just still focused around push payments. So if we can just work more on the pull payment side, where we can enable new fintechs coming into the market to actually leverage off the accounts and the funds that customers have with banks. Now is the time for pull payments to really. I mean, if we had pull payments, we would have been in a different situation right now, very simply. And pull payments is not just on Visa or MasterCard, but in really enabling account holders to be actually able to do payments. So we have a large number of pay part cards issued in the market. Unfortunately, none of them are 3DS, and none of them can be used online. So these are the areas that we really should have been working on, and these are the areas where we should focus on for right now. That's all that I had. Any questions we can take later?
Yes, thank you, Umar. Very interesting on domestic e-commerce, pull payments, and also talking about the new MDR regulations for e-commerce. I think it's a good point that we should have some interchange and MDR regulations for domestic payments on e-commerce at least. When you talk about the PayPal example for simplifying of processes, I think it's a very good point, and I have some questions that are coming up on this point. And yes, you talked about the challenge on IPFD versus the OTC cash in terms of the pricing, as well as you made a good point that in this time maybe we should focus on making no or less profits in the banking industry. Good key points, and thank you. We would like you to stay for some questions at the end. All right, guys. Now it's Umar again, Umar bin Essen. He's a CEO Hubble. I would unmute Umar. Umar, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you. I think we have to sort of divide the conversation. I'm going to borrow Umar's word, like a pre-corona or a post-corona, and just add a during corona as well. And whoever spoke before, they talked a lot about the pre-corona challenges, just the general unreadiness. Nobody was really. I mean, there was very limited collaboration. Logistics and delivery in the consumer space is definitely something that has put a constraint in this lockdown period. And people are also averse to generally the risk of cash on delivery right now. So all of these alternatives should have just been there. We had a long time to prepare for. We didn't anticipate this crisis, but there was a long time that these things should have been there, as they have been in the other markets. But during Corona, I think it's generally the essential response that all the banks and the fintechs, the entire digital payment community needs to take. And it's just making sure that the essential streams are running. And Nadeem Saab talked about logistics, but even on the other side, whether it is digital ordering or it is digital payments, all of that is still very paper-based. And one of the conversations that we've been pushing for a very long time is that there are at least 15 essential supply chains in Pakistan, each supply chain vertical being represented by 5 or 6 revenue leaders. So that's about almost 60, 70 organizations that are responsible to make sure that you get the things that you need at your homes. And any decent manufacturer, when it wants to cover Pakistan, requires about 400 to 600 distributors. And each distributor represents at the minimum 200 to 300 retailers, could go as high as almost 10,000 retailers that are being covered by one distributor. So if you look at that, there's a network effect of about 15,000 distributors, 1.5 to 2 million by some calculations, retailers. That's a massive flow of liquidity in 2 incremental steps: retailer to distributor, distributor to manufacturer. And that's just the area where closed loop fiefdoms still exist, and it's their own inability to digitize these processes that has resulted in the fact that there are a lot of distributors who don't want to continue working in an environment where they're feeling unsafe, walking into a branch or handling cash or meeting someone to make that delivery. So that is a collective failing, I think. During this crisis, it should have been there. It was a no-brainer. Uh, and other organizations, other banks in other countries have already done something similar. So it wasn't something that we had to be too innovative about it. This is an organized sector. This is not about cultural issues. It's not about adoption, that people are afraid of taxation and something like that. This is an organized sector. The companies that I'm talking about pay their taxes. So that should have been the wake-up call for us. So post-corona, I think it's obviously digital is the way forward. That's what we're trying to look at. Uh, Organizations that have been too slow to wake up and see the writing on the wall should see it very clearly now. They should try to come up with lean structures in their digital initiatives so that they don't take too much time in trying to take these digital means. And some of them, I mean, we have some very good examples in Pakistan of even banks who've been so progressive in the way they've opened up their arms to the market, in the way they've been not too insecure about their deposits. So all of these examples are right in front of us within this country. Uh, Omar talked about the regulator taking steps that we should have taken. I think going forward, we should see some sort of changes in the steps that they've seen. Maybe they take more progressive steps, and maybe they retract some of these steps, given that they still have to strike a balance with FATF, which pre-corona was our biggest crisis. So that's not going away. It's going to come back to us. I think only right now everyone is just going to relax a bit about FATF, and we're going to let things roll. So we should be prepared for these things. But the call to action is more about what the industry should have been doing pre-corona, and what the industry should be doing once this crisis fades away. So yes, digital is definitely going to take up a lot of conversations, and we could also see an influx of capital coming into these kind of initiatives. I mean, this is a very serious situation, but the whole conversation right now, I think the theme was, how do we respond to it now, and how do we respond to it? How do we benefit from it in the future? So that's definitely something. So essential supply chains is definitely an area that needs to be looked at. Government citizen interaction in terms of payments or anything else. There will definitely be a rationalization of transactional tariff. That's going to definitely happen once this goes away. Uh, this is a wake-up call for easy onboarding. So deeper use cases like Kareem talked about, that they need to look at other use cases that have not been addressed because everyone was in the rush of addressing the consumer problems. So all of these things are something that we need to look at and that we need to talk about. I think the only thing from a consumer perspective, and again, I don't represent consumer payments because that's not what we focused on at Hubble. But as a citizen, I can tell you that all the discounting and the loyalty programs were focused on, where can I get my a cheaper cheesecake, and that kind of discounting in this kind of environment isn't really relevant for us. So medicine and essential supply chain discounting, if there is still a way of sort of pushing discounts on the consumer side, that should have been a focus from day one. And in this crisis, that's more relevant from a social point of view as well, that these discounts should have been for social benefits rather than luxury items, which is where most of the people focused. So that's pretty much my 2 cents that I wanted to add. If anyone has any questions, you can start with that.
All right. Thank you, Umar. My apologies. I forgot to introduce you. It's a bit of challenging my WhatsApp screens and people messaging me. So just for everyone, Omar is the one actually who worked with the digital onboarding and the digitization of the clearance system with customs, which is commonly known as VBOC. Also, he led the digital payment project, from which now we guys are able to pay taxes online. The common use case which comes to my mind is paying for the cell phones that we are bringing in from outside now, and also digitizing the corporate supply chain for B2B payments for large manufacturers. Thank you, Umar. My apologies again. And guys, the session is open for questions. I will just unmute Kareem and Umar Malik.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay. So, Umar, I see you are mute, so I'll unmute you as well. In fact, what I will do is allow you guys to unmute yourself. So, first question that I see is, first of all, thank you all the speakers, Nadeem Saab, Kareem, Umar Moin, and Murbin Hassan. With the time that we have, I would like to ask questions and then wrap it up. So the first question that comes to mind is, or like that comes to me is that in terms of the e-commerce prepayments, the question is that instead of talking about the MDR, why not enabling all the 34 million plastics on e-commerce by default? And the gentleman thinks that the MDR is right now not an inhibiting factor, at least. So maybe Kareem, would you want to answer this?
Uh, yeah, I can answer this. See, I mean, enabling plastics on e-commerce obviously requires a lot of putting up a security infrastructure in place. Why debit cards were not, you know, enabled for e-commerce? Everyone knows that there are things like 3D secure, which you need to implement, and now payment schemes. So when we say 34 million, this is divided between different payment schemes, and each of them have their own rules and regulations around that. So I think that would be a longer route to enable all those cards on e-commerce. Uh, Banks are doing them. Some of them have done that, but we can focus on other forms of payments as well, like doing account-based payments at a local level. Uh, QR is another initiative, like you can have online payments through QR. So those can be probably much cheaper and easier options.
Okay, all right. It's a question for Umar Moin. Um, there are in fact two questions from Rehan. One is how much increase in digital transactions we are witnessing post compared to last year, month on month, or year on year and month on month after the corona pandemic, and also any new use case that is emerging given whatever ecosystem we have.
Yeah, so roughly, look, what we're looking at is our traffic is peaking at about nearly an additional 50% of traffic coming in.
Wow.
So अगर हम से दिन में 100 transactions करते थे पहले, so now we're looking at 150 transactions coming in.
Umar, which transactions, if you can clarify, OTC or others?
Yeah, so overall, I'm just talking about my system, and at the system level, the number of transactions that we're looking at. Okay. Now, if you look at the type of transactions, of course, we've had certain types of transactions have fallen much more than the others. So cash deposit, for example, or customers depositing cash in their fallen. P2P. I think IBFT is a transaction where we are looking at the numbers have gone up significantly. So more customers are actually moving funds between their wallets or between their accounts. I think that's a plus point to take away. But I think other than that, we have we've not seen a very big fall in the transactions happening from wallets. However, on the OTC side, yes, we have a significant number of drop on the transactions on OTC.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, Umar. A question that comes to my mind for Umar bin Hassan. Umar, you talked about you digitizing the VBOC and the payments. I know that for some importers, they might not be considered as essential services, but they would have their imported stuff in customs and they would want to clear it. Do you have anything in mind that what can be done digitally to have them cleared and avoid the damages being happening, and maybe it can be something which can be done over an app or maybe over a desktop solution?
So Pakistan Customs is, this may surprise everyone, that is one of the few organizations that was already very progressive in terms of technology adoption. World Bank declared it as, one of the best clearance systems in Asia. We were at least 4 or 5 years ahead of India until recently. They ahead. So all of these things are already online. So VBOC is digitally online. You can file your baggage declaration, and if there's a life-saving drug or something that requires immediate clearance, which comes by air. So the air freight unit next to Karachi airport, there's a section called ICG, Immediate Clearance Group, that will take it out immediately. And port charges and demurrages have now been either reduced or eliminated in some ports because of this situation. So that's, I think there isn't much room for us to do anything about it at this stage. However, I do think there's a huge opportunity for e-commerce players that they should go to a department called the Directorate of Reforms and Automation and a directorate in Islamabad called the National Single Window, and say that we want e-commerce integration with Pakistan Customs, so that any goods coming into Pakistan and they get stuck sometimes at the port because there might be duty implication or tax incidents, that there is a mechanism where e-commerce players can provide them the necessary duty applied on it, or if there's an exception that it requires certain documentation along with the importation. So all of those things would be available through that integration. It's already part of the scope of National Single Window. I think the e-commerce players just need to go ahead and integrate with the National Single Window. It's in Islamabad at the FPR headquarters.
All right, great. It's a question from Hamza. I don't know who to point to, but it's an open question for everyone. Kareem or Omar, what would be the business model for banks given the digital landscape in which banks will move post-payment processing with free IPFT and lower MDRs? Kareem?
So I can take first. I'm not a banker, but I can tell you the banks don't make money when they open the account or take deposit. The banks actually make money when they lend people, because that's the core business of a bank. Uh, so I mean, somehow we have been tuned into a business model that you need to apply charges to every transaction, and that's the only way you can work. As things are showing now, that when forced with free transaction regime, the banks are still going to work. Uh, so, I mean, the deposits are where they get a margin, and then they lend, and that's the spread, which is primarily the big chunk of their income. So banks can still earn money. I mean, it's just how you innovatively look at the model. In Western countries, when a transaction like request to pay was initiated, the people started innovating, the banks started innovating. So every time they would get a message from a biller or a merchant for a customer for a payment request, they would take all that data and use that data to, give certain offers to the customer later on. And that's how they used to earn. In Sweden, we have got a single app which is called Swish, which all the six banks support. That app is free. All the transactions, onboarding, there's no monthly annual charge to use the app, because everyone in the country uses that app. And the banks earn from the ancillary services which they can offer based on the data they gather.
All right, good. point, Karim. Okay, another question for both Umar and Karim. Given from Zen, given the current situation, we see regulators around the world pushing customers to make contactless transaction, which is NFC and C based, and some have even increased the minimum limit. Yes, I understand that in UK now it's £45 for pinless authorization. Given EasyPesa has done similar with NFC tags previously, and what is being done by Paces with the National Bank on HCE, what do you guys think in future for mobile contactless payments in Pakistan? Omar, we can start from you first, maybe.
Sure. I think so. It's a good question. It's definitely a good question. However, I think so again, if we break it up into two parts, like what are the things that we can do right now to tackle the corona situation, and then of course, what are the things that we can take in the longer run. We see a lot of banks who are moving towards contactless payments. We see a lot of infrastructure out there in the market which is already enabled, and banks are in the process of certifying their POS terminals. Awareness certainly needs to be worked on as well. But I think within if you look at what can we do right now within the next 30 days or the next 60 days, the only thing that banks can do is focus on getting their certifications in place and get more customers to be doing contactless payments. What they can do in the longer run is of course move more towards NFC HCE payments on their apps, on their cards. But it's not a quick win at this situation, at this point in time in the situation for Corona. I don't think that it's gonna you're gonna have significant number of transactions picking up on contactless just now.
Fair enough. Karim?
Yeah. So I would agree with Omar. I mean, it's not a short-term play. The enablement of infrastructure is going on right now. Many banks are doing that, but for a 30 to 60-day period, obviously we are looking at reduced mobility, and obviously these transactions may not have a significant volume. But interestingly, we have worked with a number of international fintechs, and there is also now another form of transaction, contactless usage, being enabled, where customers can initiate an e-commerce transaction and authorize that using their physical card by tapping on their mobile. So we will see more use cases come, but I think it will take time because banks need to get their infrastructure certified and ready. So banks can utilize this period of lull to get them ready.
Okay. Thank you, Karim. Two questions I will take, and then we will ask Zain to, because he was one of the speakers, to have a few minutes with us, and I will then ask Mayor for the closing note. Two questions, guys. Sorry. And after that, we will try to take these questions to our platforms and have the experts answer it. So the first question is for everyone. Again, what is the future? It's from Hamad. What is the future of e-remittance or digital SWIFT transactions in Pakistan, as there is a high dependency on paper-based operations? I think it's related to, again, the R form which Karim was talking about. So maybe Karim would want to answer it.
See, I mean, there's something which a regulator needs to talk with the banks, that given the circumstances where mobility is reduced, there's a kind of a curfew type situation where you can't just ask. I mean, it's putting in harm's way both the bank staff and your own office staff to handle this paperwork and all of this. So, yeah, I think for the business to business kind of remittances, for the business to individual remittances, there isn't much issue. The banks, most of them handle it automatically, but for business to business remittances, we need to streamline the processes, make some exceptions, or alter the SOPs so that it can be done in a remote fashion. So yeah, regulator will need to.
Yeah, Kareem, can I answer the part regarding business to business remit? Because
Sure,
that
sure.
related to imports and exports. So the export form and the import forms are already now digitized. The part that's not digitized is uh, so Pakistan Customs and State Bank and the branch managers communication is all digitized. It's through an interface that they can submit the Form I and Form E digitally. What's not digitized is when the corporation comes to open an LC with the bank, that is still all paper based. And that's what the banks need to work out on digitizing. And there were a couple of banks that thought about internally within the bank is paper based and getting the export or import form filled up by any manufacturer who's importing or exporting is all non-digital. So the government to government part is already digital, but the business to government isn't.
Thank you, Umar and Kareem. Last question. Sorry, guys, I am getting a lot of questions, but we have to wrap it up in time. And I will take one last question from Sultan Raja. His question is: what is the future of digital payments? Crowds funding in Pakistan, and and how our panelists think it will impact the business, overall business in Pakistan. So maybe from Kareem again.
I mean, I haven't researched a lot about this topic, but the little bit that I know earlier, crowdfunding was explicitly taboo. In fact, in crowdfunding, you also need to divide between various areas, whether it's for P2P lending or for some kind of investment kind of crowdfunding, or it is for donations or collecting money for a certain cause. So there are different segments. Now I think CCP has in its sandbox allowed applications for crowdfunding. So there is a kind of a regulatory structure where you can register your crowdfunding initiative. Investments through crowdfunding probably is still not very encouraged, given the situation in our country where people regularly do scams. So that is, I think, with more stronger regulatory and legal framework after that, that can come. But on the donations or fund collection site or uh, smaller P2P lending kind of platform, I think SCCP has given a way to register your initiative and then do that.
All right. Thank you, Kareem. Thank you, guys. Umar Bines and Umar Moin Malik and Kareem. I would like Raza to say his part in the next few minutes. I'm sorry for not taking all your questions. We'll try to, as I said, take them offline with our platforms, and after that we'll close the session. So Raza, if you can please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope everyone is doing fine and maintaining social distancing. Uh, I was to present whatever I had in my mind and wrote down on a few points. During the session, it would have been nice to take it before the Q&A. However, esteemed guests like Umar's and Kareem have already shed a lot of light on what needs to be done. There are a few things that I would like to share, quickly wrap it up. The session is about to end as well. One thing that I've been advocating a lot for the past good year now is building the ecosystem. I very strongly believe that one of the most important initiatives during this testing times, which are very turbulent times as well for all of us, is to build the ecosystem. And how can we do that is through awareness campaigns. And these awareness campaigns will be for the customers who are less tech savvy. We need to reach out to them directly, tell them the benefits of digital banking by talking to them in their native language. And also, if at all it is possible, through their own people, through the community leaders that they listen to and that they admire. If the talk is going to them in their own language and through those influential people, they will listen to it and they will be more open to adapting to it, because the TVCs and all that we do are mostly for the people who are in urban areas. So that is what I think needs to be done on everyone's part. And for the banks, I think banking through digital channels is the only way forward, because this is the time to build customer habit of using digital channels. And lastly, banks must keep on identifying the services that can be provided via digital channels, like change of contact number, change of address, and one very important thing that's going to come up in the next month is zakat declaration form. Everybody will be running from point A to point B for submitting these forms. If this can at all be done online, then that will be a lot of convenience for everyone. And I would also like to, I'll skip the fintech area because uh, a lot has been shared on that. Regarding the digital onboarding, because I've had previous experience of merchant acquiring as well, the first thing that needs to go out is the paper. We need to eliminate it. And by eliminating the paper, I mean getting rid of the physical form, which a merchant while coming on board needs to sign. And that is not a simple form. It's like 8 to 10 pager form, and then provide the signatures on every form and this and that. So that needs to go out to make it convenient for the merchants. And how can we do it as an alternate is the required customer data can be filled digitally via a web or an app. Digital signatures, like the guests or the earlier speakers mentioned as well, is a very good option. We can secure digital signature or enable biometric verification like we did during the biometric verification drive. Some of the banks introduced it, but later those apps were brought down. But that is something which is possible and has already been done. We can obtain valid mobile numbers and then perform KYC over call, so that there is no physical presence of a bank employee at merchant's premise or merchant to go and visit the bank. It should all be done online, and in this time, this is the only way forward. And one thing the banks can do is, for these merchants which are coming on board via these digital onboarding mediums, is activate only non-checking accounts, so that all the transactions on these accounts are done digitally. This will make a habit of uh, this will make a habit for these merchants to do transactions online as well. And last but not the least, I would like to say something regarding the last point that was there. What is our expectation from regulations to make the digital conversation quick for customers? Waiver of charges has been mentioned by everyone, which is a very good initiative, because a lot of people who are having small payments to be made from one person to another can take benefit of it and see the convenience that it brings to people. Also, the suspension of biometric verification for activating internet and mobile banking is another step in the right direction by State Bank. And one more thing that me as an employee of Infobip really advocate is and want all the banks to come together is the need of making the central bank understand the benefits of WhatsApp banking. It is done in other countries. It is done in Gulf region as well. Emirates NBD has implemented it. A lot of banks are implementing it because WhatsApp is offered almost at dirt cheap rates by all the MNOs. Downloading an app is still a difficult task, and then logging onto it. However, WhatsApp is on our daily routine. Most of us are on WhatsApp rather than SMS or any other app. So that is where I want all the banks to come up, join hands, and talk to central bank and make them understand the need of WhatsApp banking. Also, for the people who are already on board, I think, and performing banking through digital channels like you, me, for the past good decade or so, we need to provide conversational convenience to them. Because if we do not, then there is not much for them in it. There will be a need for them to visit the branches, which is what we don't want. So because the cost of visiting a branch is significantly higher than a digital transaction. We all know that. We all talk about it as well. So give something to these people who have been digitally on board for a long time. Give them the option. I mean, I want my app to talk to me and tell me that, Raza, you have X amount of funds available at your disposal. Why not invest it in this thing and then take benefit for the next couple of days or weeks? This is what I really want. And so one more thing, yes, on the infrastructure part, I think Umar Hassan or Karim Jindani mentioned it very well. I mean, the infrastructure of the banks needs to be in place because the number of transactions will grow. A lot of initiatives are coming in, a lot of things are happening, people are not going out of their homes. So this infrastructure of the banks needs to be in place so that the system, with the increase or significant increase of usage on digital platforms, does not crash. So that's about it really from my side.
Thank
And
you,
if there are
Raza.
any questions, I'm open for them. Thank you very much, Umair and Basit, for having me the opportunity.
Thank you, Raza.
Welcome.
Key interesting points. I like the idea of banks opting for WhatsApp as a method to banking. It's a good point, and I think the idea behind if the onboarding is the basic idea of being paperless on an onboarding of a merchant can be a good point. So thank you everyone for joining. I will give Umair last 1 minute because we are really going out of time to close the session. And thank you, Umar, again, Nadeem Saab, Umar bin Hassan, and Kareem for joining and giving. And thanks to every one of you who joined for this session. Umar, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Basit. I just would like to thank you so much, everyone, for coming together at a very short notice, especially our speakers. It just show our interest toward a common goal, digitization of payment to introduce convenience. And convenience is the key here, as that will ensure wider adoption. Let's use this period to continue reflecting on how we achieve that. Please continue the follow-up discussion on our WhatsApp group, and let's hope we all enable and see increased usage of digital payment starting now and continuing in post-corona world as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.